My name is Sarah, and for 10 years, I believed I had married into a loving family. I was wrong. This is the story of how my husband's family smiled at my face for a decade, while planning to take everything my father built the moment he was gone. I met David when I was 24. He was charming, attentive, the kind of man who remembered how I liked my coffee and never forgot an anniversary. His parents, Robert and Linda, welcomed me with open arms from the very first dinner. I thought I was lucky. I thought I had found a second family. What I didn't know back then was that my father, Henry, had spent 30 years building a shipping logistics company from nothing. It was worth more than anyone in David's family ever said out loud. And somewhere along the way, without me ever noticing, that company became the real reason I was sitting at their dinner table every Sunday. My father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when I was 31. David held my hand through every hospital visit. Linda brought soup to my father's house every single week. I remember crying to David one night, telling him how grateful I was that his parents cared so much about my dad. He just smiled and said, "Of course we care. Your family." My father passed away 8 months later. At the reading of the will, I learned he had left me 60% of the company. Not David. Not his parents. Me. My father, it turned out, had never fully trusted the people around me. He'd only pretended to, for my sake, while quietly building in safeguards I wouldn't understand until much later. That night, for the first time in 10 years, I saw a different look on David's face. It wasn't grief for my father. It was calculation. Within a month, everything changed. David started helping me with company decisions I never asked for help with. Linda began showing up at the office, introducing herself to my father's old executives as family, practically a partner. Robert suggested, gently at first, that I should let people with more business experience handle the harder decisions, so I could focus on grieving. I didn't see it yet. I was too busy missing my dad to notice I was being slowly pushed out of my own inheritance. It started small. David began attending board meetings without telling me, introducing himself as the family representative. When I asked him about it, he said he was just trying to help ease my burden. I believed him, because after 10 years of marriage, I had no reason not to. Then came the paperwork. One evening, David asked me to sign a stack of documents, saying they were routine restructuring forms his father's lawyer had drawn up to protect the company from estate taxes. I was exhausted, grieving, and trusting. I almost signed, but something made me pause. Maybe it was the way David wouldn't meet my eyes. Maybe it was a habit my father drilled into me since childhood. Never sign anything without reading every line twice. So I told David I'd look it over that weekend. That night, I actually read the documents. Buried on page 14 was a clause quietly transferring operational control of the company to a newly formed entity, one where David was listed as majority director. My name would remain on paper as an owner, but I would have no actual authority left. I felt sick. 10 years of Sunday dinners, of Linda's soup, of Robert's advice, replayed in my mind like a movie I'd been watching upside down the entire time. I didn't confront David immediately. Instead, I called my father's old lawyer, a quiet, careful man named Mr. Alvarez, who had handled Dad's affairs for over 2 decades. I told him what I'd found. He was silent for a moment, then said something I'll never forget. "Sarah, your father asked me to build something into the will, just in case this exact situation ever happened. He said he hoped you'd never need it." It turned out my father had included a clause requiring any transfer of controlling interest to be personally reviewed and approved by Mr. Alvarez himself, for a period of 10 years after his death. David's document, the one I'd almost signed, would have been legally void from the moment it was filed. My father had protected me from beyond the grave, quietly, without ever telling me he didn't fully trust the family I'd married into. I confronted David that weekend. He didn't deny it. He simply said, "It's just business, Sarah. You were never going to run this company alone anyway." Those words told me everything I needed to know about the last 10 years of my marriage. I didn't yell. I didn't cry in front of him. I simply called Mr. Alvarez the next morning and asked him to walk me through every option my father had left me. Over the following weeks, with Mr. Alvarez's help, I formally removed David from any advisory role in the company, revoked Linda and Robert's informal access to my executives, and began the process of filing for divorce. Linda called me hysterical, accusing me of tearing the family apart over paperwork. Robert sent a long email about loyalty and gratitude. I didn't respond to either of them. I had spent 10 years mistaking their attention for love, when really, it had only ever been an investment they were managing. The divorce took almost a year. David's lawyer tried, more than once, to argue he was entitled to a share of the company as marital property. But my father's foresight held firm. The company had been kept in a separate trust structure from day one, untouched by marital assets. In the end, David walked away with almost nothing from the company he'd spent a decade quietly circling. I kept everything my father built. I run the company myself now, with a small team of people I trust completely, people who were loyal to my father long before any of this happened. Sometimes I think about that Sunday dinner, 10 years ago, when Linda first hugged me and called me family. I used to believe that hug was love. Now I understand it was the beginning of a very long, very patient plan. And I understand something else, too, that my father, in his quiet way, saw what I couldn't, and loved me enough to protect me from it without ever saying a word. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Linda at a grocery store, completely by accident. She looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she said quietly, "I know you think we never cared about you." I didn't answer right away, because the truth is, I did care about them, once. That was the part that hurt the most, not that they wanted the company, but that I had genuinely believed the love was real. I told her I hoped she found peace, and I meant it. Not because I forgave what happened, but because carrying that anger forward wasn't going to give me back the 10 years I'd spent believing in something that was never true. I walked away that day lighter than I had felt in months. The company is doing better than it ever has. Under my leadership, we expanded into 2 new states last year, and I finally renamed the building's front lobby after my father, something Linda and Robert never once suggested doing. In all the years they claimed to love him too. David reached out once, almost a year later, asking if we could talk things through. I didn't respond. Some doors, once you understand what was really behind them, are better left closed. My father used to tell me, back when I was a little girl watching him build that company from a single rented warehouse, "Sarah, protect what's yours quietly. Loud people show you their love. Real people show you their loyalty when no one's watching." I didn't understand what he meant back then. I understand